Have you ever sat quietly in your living room, looked around at the walls you've known for years, and wondered, what would I do if I lost all of this? Not someday far away. Not as a distant possibility. But really asked yourself, what if it happened now, at this stage of life? For many women over 60, that question feels uncomfortable. Maybe even frightening. Because a home is more than just a place to sleep. It's your memories, your routines, your sense of safety. It's where you raised your children, where you built your life, where you felt grounded. But life doesn't always follow the plan we imagined. Sometimes it shifts in ways we never expected. A loss, an illness, rising costs, a change in family, or simply time catching up with us. And suddenly, something that once felt permanent no longer is. If you're facing that reality right now, or even if you're just quietly worried it could happen one day, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not alone. And more importantly, you are not without options. In this conversation, I'm going to walk you through 5 things you can do if you ever find yourself without a home later in life. Not perfect solutions. Not easy answers. But real, practical steps that can help you steady yourself, regain control, and begin again, even when it feels like everything has been taken away. And I want to start with the most important place, not months from now, not years from now, but right here, in the immediate moment when everything feels uncertain. Because when something like this happens, the first instinct is panic. Your mind starts racing. Where will I sleep tonight? What will I do tomorrow? How will I survive? But the truth is, the first thing you need isn't a long-term plan. It's stability. Even just a little bit of it. You don't need to solve your entire future overnight. You just need to get through the next few days safely and calmly. That might mean reaching out to someone you trust, even if it feels uncomfortable. A friend, a neighbor, a distant relative. You don't have to have all the answers when you make that call. Sometimes just saying, I need a little help right now, is enough to open a door. And if there isn't someone in your immediate circle, there are places designed for moments exactly like this. Community centers, local churches, senior assistance programs. These are not places of failure. They are places of support. They exist because life can be unpredictable, especially as we get older. I know it can feel difficult to ask for help. Many women of your generation were taught to be strong, independent, and self-reliant. You've spent a lifetime taking care of others. So when the roles reverse, it can feel uncomfortable, even embarrassing. But needing support in a moment of crisis is not weakness. It's wisdom. It's survival. At the same time, while you're finding a place to land, even temporarily, it's important to gather and protect what matters most. Your identification, your medications, important documents, anything essential to your health and identity. These are the things that will help you move forward, no matter where you go next. Think of this stage not as losing everything, but as narrowing down to what truly matters. And then, once you've created just a little bit of breathing room, something shifts. The panic softens. Your thoughts become clearer. And that's when you can begin to look at the next piece of the puzzle. Because staying afloat isn't only about where you sleep. It's also about how you sustain yourself day to day. Money may be tight. In many cases, it already is. Fixed incomes, rising expenses, unexpected costs, they all add up. And when your housing situation changes, that pressure can feel even heavier. But even in that situation, there are ways to create a small, but steady sense of financial ground beneath your feet. The first step is understanding exactly what you have coming in. Even if it's not much. Whether it's social security, disability benefits, a small pension, or savings, knowing your baseline gives you something to work with. And from there, the goal isn't to create a perfect budget. It's simply to keep your life manageable. Sometimes that means making choices that don't feel ideal, but make sense. Driving an older car that's already paid off instead of worrying about payments. Reducing insurance coverage to the essentials. Finding ways to heat your space that cost less, even if they are not what you would have chosen before. It's about adjusting your lifestyle to match your reality without losing your dignity in the process. And I want to pause here for a moment, because this part matters deeply. Your worth has nothing to do with the size of your home, the condition of your car, or how much money is in your account. Those things can change. And sometimes they do. But who you are, your resilience, your experiences, your strength, those don't disappear just because your circumstances have. You are still you. And that matters more than anything you've lost. As you begin to stabilize financially, even in small ways, you may also find opportunities to bring in a little extra support. Not in a way that overwhelms you, but in a way that fits your life now. Maybe it's something simple. Watching someone's home while they are away. Helping care for a pet. Selling small items you no longer need. These aren't big solutions, but they can make a real difference when every dollar counts. And more than that, they give you something even more valuable than money, a sense of purpose. A reason to get up in the morning. A reminder that you still have something to offer. Because you do. And as you start to regain that small sense of control, something else begins to open up. You move from just surviving to considering what might actually work for you in the longer term. Not the life you had before, but a life that fits where you are now. And that's where things begin to shift into a different kind of thinking, not just about getting through the moment, but about creating a place, however simple, that you can call your own again. And when you reach that point, something inside you begins to settle just a little. Not because everything is fixed, but because you've made it through the most frightening part. You've found your footing, even if it's shaky. You've taken a breath. And now, you can begin to ask a different kind of question. Not how do I survive today, but where can I live in a way that I can actually sustain? This is where many women feel overwhelmed again, because the idea of home has always looked a certain way. A house. A familiar neighborhood. A place filled with history. And when that version is no longer available, it can feel like there are no good options left. But the truth is, there are options. They may look different than what you imagined years ago, but different doesn't always mean worse. Sometimes it simply means simpler, more manageable, and more aligned with what your life needs now. For some women, that might mean sharing a space. I know that idea can feel uncomfortable at first. After decades of having your own home, your own routines, your own quiet, the thought of living with someone else can feel like a step backward. But it doesn't have to be. There are many women in your exact situation looking for the same thing you are: safety, affordability, and a sense of companionship without losing independence. Shared housing, especially with someone close to your age, can ease financial pressure and also bring something unexpected: connection. Not constant socializing, not giving up your space, but simply knowing that someone else is nearby. Someone who understands this stage of life. Someone who also wakes up some mornings and wonders how everything changed so quickly. And sometimes, that quiet understanding can mean more than having a large house all to yourself. For others, the idea of mobility becomes an option. Living in a small camper, a mobile home, or even converting a van into a simple living space. Now, I know that might sound extreme at first, especially if you've never considered anything like it before. But when you look at it more closely, it offers something powerful: control over your expenses. No large mortgage. No overwhelming property taxes. No constant repairs that drain your savings. Just a small, manageable space that belongs to you, even if it's not perfect. Yes, there are trade-offs. Less space, fewer comforts, sometimes dealing with things that break or don't work the way they should. But there's also a certain kind of freedom in knowing that your living situation isn't slowly slipping out of your hands. You're choosing something you can actually maintain. And then there's another path, one that some women quietly choose without talking about it much, moving somewhere less expensive. A smaller town, a rural area, a place where the cost of living isn't constantly pushing you to the edge. It might mean being farther from where you spent most of your life. It might mean starting fresh in a place where no one knows your story. And that can feel both lonely and strangely liberating at the same time. Because when you're no longer tied to what used to be, you're free to build something new, even if it's simple. And sometimes, simple is exactly what brings peace. Now, as you explore these options, I want you to remember something very important. You don't have to rush this decision. Even though the situation feels urgent, the choice of where you live next is deeply personal. It's not just about cost. It's about how you want to feel when you wake up in the morning. Safe, calm, able to rest, able to breathe. So take your time, as much as you can. Ask questions. Visit places. Talk to people. Trust your instincts. Because you've lived long enough to know what feels right and what doesn't. And as you begin to settle into a more stable living situation, even if it's modest, even if it's far from what you once had, something else begins to shift quietly in the background. You start to think not just about where you are, but where you're going. Because losing your home doesn't mean your story is over. It means your story has changed direction. And that direction, even if it feels uncertain now, can still lead somewhere meaningful. This is where rebuilding comes into the picture. And I don't mean rebuilding in the way people often imagine, a big house, a full bank account, everything restored exactly as it was. No. Rebuilding at this stage of life looks different. It's slower. It's more intentional. And in many ways, it's more honest. It might start with something as simple as setting aside a small amount each month. Not a lot. Just something. A quiet act of saying, I'm still planning for my future. It might mean looking at a piece of land, somewhere affordable, even if it doesn't have anything on it yet. Just knowing that there is a place out there that could one day be yours. Not today, not tomorrow, but eventually. And yes, that idea can feel daunting. Starting over in your 60s or 70s. It sounds exhausting just thinking about it. But let me ask you something gently. Is it more exhausting than staying stuck in a situation that slowly drains you every day? Because sometimes, the hardest path is actually the one that leads to something better. Rebuilding doesn't have to be grand. It can be quiet, steady, and deeply personal. It can be learning how to fix small things yourself. It can be creating routines that keep your life simple and manageable. It can be choosing not to carry the weight of everything that went wrong, and instead focusing on what can still go right. And I know there will be days when it feels heavy. Days when you think about what you lost, what could have been, what you wish had turned out differently. That's part of it. You're human. You've loved, you've built, you've given so much over the years. Of course it hurts to let go of something that mattered. But holding on too tightly to the past can quietly steal the energy you need to move forward. So little by little, you begin to release it. Not all at once. Just enough to make space for something new. And as that space opens, you may find something surprising. A sense of possibility. Not the kind you felt in your 20s or 30s. Not full of big dreams and endless time. But a quieter kind. A grounded kind. The kind that says, I can still make this work. And that belief, even if it starts out as nothing more than a quiet whisper inside you, begins to change the way you see each day. Not because everything suddenly becomes easy, but because you begin to realize something powerful. You're still here. You're still capable. And you still have a say in how your life moves forward from this moment on. Now, this last part is the one that often gets overlooked, but in many ways, it's the most important of all. Because no matter where you live, no matter how much money you have or don't have, the way you think and feel about your situation will shape everything. Losing your home later in life isn't just a practical challenge. It's an emotional one. It can shake your sense of identity. It can leave you feeling embarrassed, ashamed, or even invisible. Especially when you look around and feel like everyone else has their life together. But I want you to pause and really consider this. You are only seeing the surface of other people's lives. You don't see their struggles, their fears, the things they've lost or are quietly holding together behind closed doors. You are not alone in this, even if it feels that way. And more importantly, your situation does not define your worth. It's so easy to fall into that quiet voice that says, I should have done things differently. Or I should have been more prepared. Or even, I failed. But life is not a straight line. It's not a checklist that guarantees a perfect outcome if you follow every step correctly. Sometimes things happen that no amount of planning could have prevented. Loss, illness, unexpected change, these are part of being human. So instead of turning that voice inward against yourself, try something different. Speak to yourself the way you would speak to a dear friend who came to you in the same situation. You wouldn't tell her she failed. You wouldn't tell her she should be ashamed. You would tell her you've been through a lot. And you're still standing. And that's exactly what's true for you. One of the most important things you can do right now is protect your peace, even in small ways. Create little routines that give your day structure. Something as simple as having your morning coffee at the same time each day, stepping outside for fresh air, or taking a short walk can help ground you. These small anchors remind your mind and your body that life is still moving forward, even if it looks different than before. Connection also matters more than you might think. It's easy to pull away when you're going through something difficult. To isolate, to keep your situation to yourself, to avoid feeling judged. But isolation can quietly make everything feel heavier. Even a small connection can make a difference. A conversation with someone at a local center. A phone call. A comment shared online. It doesn't have to be deep or complicated. Just a reminder that you are still part of the world, and the world still has space for you. And then there's something else, something that may not seem obvious at first. Gratitude. Now, I know that word can feel out of place in a situation like this. When you've lost something so significant, the idea of being grateful might even feel frustrating. But gratitude doesn't mean ignoring your pain. It doesn't mean pretending everything is okay. It simply means allowing yourself to notice what is still here. Maybe it's your health, even if it's not perfect. Maybe it's your ability to get up each morning. Maybe it's the fact that you found a place to stay, even if it's temporary. Maybe it's the strength you didn't know you had until you needed it. These things matter. They become the quiet foundation that helps you keep going. And as you continue forward, something begins to happen that you might not expect. You begin to trust yourself again. Not because everything is certain, but because you've already faced something incredibly difficult, and you didn't give up. You adapted. You made decisions. You found ways to keep going, even when it felt overwhelming. That's resilience. And it doesn't disappear with age. In many ways, it becomes stronger. So when you think about your future now, try not to see it as something that's already decided or limited. Instead, see it as something that is still unfolding, one step at a time. You don't need to have all the answers today. You don't need to rebuild everything overnight. You just need to keep moving forward in small, steady ways. And I want you to remember this: your life still has value. Your story still matters. There is still meaning in your days, even if they don't look the way they used to. If you've made it this far in this conversation, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever faced a moment where everything changed unexpectedly? What helped you get through it? Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear right now. And if this message spoke to you in any way, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, Elderly Faith Journey. There's a whole community here of people who understand, who support each other, and who are walking through this stage of life together. No matter where you are right now, no matter how uncertain things may feel, please hold on to this. You are not finished. You are not forgotten. And it is never too late to begin again. Here's to finding strength in places you didn't know you had, and continuing forward, one step at a time.